I want to bring in Ohio Senator J.D. Vance joining us now, and sir, it's good to have you back on. There's everybody right now is all I'm hearing from the mainstream media is that it was a jury of his peers, and you had 12 people that all agreed and 34 counts of guilty. It's not about what the jury decided in this case. It's about the fact that they took a ridiculous bookkeeping infraction that's typically a parking ticket, and they turned it into 34 felonies, and then they had a judge sit on the scale and turn this into something that the jury really had no choice but to, in my opinion, I don't think the jury could have acquitted this because the way that they pushed it on them, there was no chance.
Yeah, Rob, I mean, look, I certainly wish the jury had been courageous and it stood up to this ridiculous thing, but the problem here is in the political prosecution itself. The judge committed a number of reversible errors here. First of all, he could have changed venue so that you don't have a bunch of people who are predisposed to hate Donald Trump making up the jury pool. Yep. The jury instructions that he gave, Rob, were explicitly buying into the prosecution's theory of the case. The jury's supposed to decide this stuff, not have the judge decide it for them and then pass them off basically a box checking routine to convict the former president. So the problem here primarily, Rob, you're right, it's not the jury. The problem is a politically biased judge who donated to Joe Biden's presidential campaign, who clearly is an unhinged partisan, and by the way, whose daughter has made millions of dollars fundraising off this very trial of Donald Trump. That is the problem here. And I think any effort to try to sort of, cover yourself with the jury here ignores the way in which this was very motivated politically from the very beginning.
And we're so, as a country, we are so divided now. I mean, we were very divided 24 hours ago. Now it's far worse. We have this man in the White House that promised he would bring us together. Today he does a press conference where he says that no one's above the law, and he has this arrogant smirk when he's asked a couple questions by reporters. This is a man who's found himself surrounded by credible, irrefutable evidence, including bank records, of his years-long scheme with his family to bring in millions of dollars from places like China, from Russia, from Ukraine, to launder that money through many accounts, to conceal the source, to conceal the destination of that money. And he stands up in front of the American people and basically mocks former President Trump for saying that this case was rigged.
Yeah, Rob, it's completely disgraceful. Joe Biden, of course, his own Justice Department said that he violated the law, but he was too old and feeble to actually stand trial. So this is not a guy who can sort of pretend that he's facing no legal problems himself. But more importantly, Rob, the entire trial itself was concocted to distract from Joe Biden's political troubles. You had his own Department of Justice Administration officials going to join the New York prosecutor's team to go after his political rival. Why? Because they know they can't talk about lowering inflation because inflation is higher. They can't talk about securing the border because it's a disaster. What they can talk about is this shambolic trial, which distracts from the fact that Democrats have been a complete failure in governing. And just to the American people, you're right, Rob, we are divided. But to the American people, do you want the guy who's making an argument to you about why he should be your president, or do you want the guy who's old and feeble and trying to throw his political opponent in jail? It's not a difficult question to me, which is why I think this trial, Rob, is going to lead to the election of Donald Trump, because the American people see right through it.
Yeah, I think they really jumped the shark here in a really bad way. You were on CNN. I want to play this moment with Wolf Blitzer.
This judge committed multiple elements of reversible error, and he did it while his daughter has made a ton of money off of Democratic candidates and while he himself donated to the Biden campaign.
So let me repeat the question.
You cannot say that this trial was anything more than politics masquerading as justice. And yes, I will help Donald Trump. I will help Donald Trump however I think that I can, Wolf, because if we allow this to happen, it's so much bigger and so much more troubling than Donald Trump. If we allow this standard that you can throw your political opponents in jail because they're doing better than you in an election, it will be the end of this country as we know it.
You know, I said it last night, Senator. This is the equivalent of Joe Biden being charged in, Macon, Georgia. You got a Trump prosecutor, you got a Trump judge whose son works for the RNC, and they're throwing Joe Biden in prison on ridiculous charges. Do you think the media would be as forgiving for a case like that?
on a paperwork charge. The entire argument, Rob, is that it was a bookkeeping violation. Of course, the media would not take it in stride. And this goes to the heart of the question, Rob. This is so much more important than a single election or a single political candidate. You know, I served in the United States Marine Corps. 250 years of American legal tradition is being shredded by Joe Biden because he doesn't want to lose an election. Do we really want to live in a country where we throw our political opponents in jail instead of persuading the American people that we should have the right to govern? It's such a disgrace and such an insult to this country's long history and tradition. I hope the American people reject it, Rob. I certainly am going to do everything I can.
I've got 30 seconds left. You've signed a letter. You, Rick Scott, Roger Marshall, Marco Rubio. You're not working with Democrats as a response to what the partisanship of this lawfare. Tell us about that.
It's very simple, Rob. We have to stop complaining and writing mean letters. We have to actually start doing things. And what we've said here is that we're not cooperating with Democrats. We're not going to let their legislation get on the glide path in the United States Senate. And me personally, Rob, I've been holding Merrick Garland's Department of Justice nominations because we need action. The only language the Democrats understand is power. We need to be willing to use our power to push back against this craziness. And if we do that, maybe they'll stop trying to throw their political opponents in jail, but we have to try.
Well done. Senator, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thanks, Rob.